I'm sorry, excuse me? Wait, what did you just say? Do you want to say that again? I'm sorry, I must not have heard you right. What did you say? How narrow-minded. So bigoted. So mean. Intolerant. Arrogant. What? I was just trying to say that ice cream is the best medicine. Oh, sorry. I thought you said that belief in Jesus, that he's the Son of God, that he died and rose again, that he's the only way to be reconciled to God again and get into heaven. I thought you said that. Oh yeah. Who? Hey, welcome back. And just to start off, this next topic that we're going to be covering is probably one of the most problematic ones that we have in our culture now, because it does seem so arrogant. It does seem so narrow-minded. I mean, really, how could you go up to somebody and tell them that they're wrong for believing something that they believe so sincerely? I mean, how could you tell somebody that Jesus is the only way back to God? That's the only way you get to heaven. It's the only way you're reconciled. It's the only way that you're made right. I mean, honestly, think about that. I mean, doesn't that feel uncomfortable? I mean, if you were to think about the friends who don't believe the way that you do, or if you were to think about friends who believe in other religions, don't you kind of want to leave that part of the conversation out? Wait, what religion are you? Yeah, you don't believe that Jesus is the Son of God, huh? Well, if you don't believe in Jesus, then you're going to heaven. But why do Christians say that Jesus is the only way? Well, Christians make that claim because Jesus made that claim. Listen, it's not our idea that he is the only way, the truth, and the life. It's his idea. So give us a little break sometimes and take it up with Jesus, which is actually a great start. It's something you probably should be doing. Take everything up with Jesus. But honestly, Jesus is the one who taught this about himself. And he did something so amazing, the resurrection, that it convinced the people around him to start teaching it to everyone that they knew. I mean, Jesus said this about himself in John 14. Peter said this about Jesus in Acts 4. John said this about Jesus in 1 John 2. And Paul said this about Jesus in 1 Timothy 2. And trust me, there are plenty other verses that teach this, say that Jesus is the only way. Jesus is central to Christianity. It's not so much what Jesus taught, but it's really about who he was, what he did. When you look at Jesus' death, when you look at his crucifixion, the reason why he went to trial, the reason why he was crucified wasn't because of his teachings, it was because of who he said he was. And this next fact is so crazy because when you look at the world religions, if you take their leader out of the picture, well, you still have that religion. For example, if you take Buddha out of Buddhism or you take Muhammad out of Islam, well, you still have Buddhism, you still have the Islamic religion. But if you take Jesus out of Christianity, well, you don't really have Christianity anymore. If Jesus wasn't who he claimed to be, well, then you have nothing. And this is why Christians make the claim that Jesus is the only way, because, well, it's all about him. And he taught this about himself. And he did something so amazing, the resurrection, that it convinced people around him to teach it to everyone they knew. It's all about Jesus. But this does bring up a great question, is what about all these other religions? And when it comes to all these other religions, I mean, you can probably think of a handful, but there really are hundreds, if not thousands of different religions out there. But I want to break it down for you because there are really only two. That's right. There's really only two religions. There's the one religion that says salvation comes as a reward for what you've done. And the other religion says that salvation comes by what someone else has done for you. Really, those are the basic two religions. One that says salvation comes as a reward because of something you've done, and the other says that salvation comes because of what someone else did for you. Now, if you feel that you can do it all on your own, if you feel that you can do something, then Christianity really has nothing to offer you. But if you really feel that you need someone to step in, that you need someone to save you, well, then Christianity has everything for you. And so I'm not trying to knock down other religions, because the question is, well, don't you find good, moral, sincere people in those other religions? Well, yeah, of course you do. And I'm not even saying that you don't find good things inside of those religions. But the question really is being good and moral and sincere enough? Because in every world religion, what you find is that they say is something is wrong. Something is wrong with people, something is wrong with the world, something needs to be fixed, something needs to be directed in the right direction. And so if something is wrong, the question that naturally follows is, well, how do we make it right? How do we point things in the right direction? How do we fix all of this? But if it's by being good, then how good is good enough? And if it's by being moral, well, how moral is enough? I mean, is it always work, work, work? I mean, do you ever find rest in that work? And of course, you can be so sincere about the things that you believe. You can be so sincere about the work that you put in. But sincerity doesn't necessarily mean you're right, because you can be sincerely wrong. I mean, this is the majority of stories with people in their first loves. They totally thought that they found the right person. They totally thought that they found the one, and they were sincere about it, and they put in the good work, and they had this good, feeling, good vibes all around it. But then came the heartbreak. Their good intentions weren't good enough. Their sincere love wasn't sincere enough, and it turned out to be sincerely wrong. And sometimes that sincerity, no matter how sincere they were, had some negative consequences to that. And this is why Jesus is the answer, because he's the only one who solves the problem. Again, when we look at that question of, something's wrong with the world, something's wrong with people, something needs to be made right, Jesus comes into the picture and he makes those things right again. That we have a good God and he's made a way for us, and that way is through Jesus. Now I have to take a second and really address that part of there being a good God out there. Because how is God a good God? Well, God is a good God because he's a loving God, which brings back the question though, if there's a good God out there and if he's loving, then why would he send people to hell? Like, doesn't he just seem angry and he's like sending people to hell for not believing in him? I mean, that's something that I often hear, that people don't want to believe in God if there is a God out there, because I don't want to believe in a God who will send people to hell just because they don't believe in Jesus. And while that's not an entirely accurate statement, because, we're all headed to hell. That statement that I said before kind of puts us on this neutral ground, but really we're all headed on this downward, staircase into hell. But the good news is that Jesus saves us from that. He pulls us from that because we have a good God. We have a good God because he's a loving God, that he sent Jesus to save us from that. But he's also angry. And the reason he's angry is for the exact reason that he's good. It's because he's loving. Listen, you can't really be loving without being willing to be angry at the things that separate you from the things that you actually love. I mean, if someone were pulling the attention of my wife away from me, if it was a person or a book or a TV show, I would be a little bit angry at those things. I'd be angry at the person. I'd be angry at the book. I'd be angry at the TV show. I'd be like, listen, you're spending all this time with this other thing and it's not me. And it angers me a little bit because I love you that much. And if I didn't care, then I probably wouldn't be that loving. I mean, if my wife were spending all this time with another dude and I didn't care, well, I think it'd be okay to question how much I actually loved her, because that's not right. And it's very much the same with God, that there's some separation there, and that he's so loving that it angers him when we are separated from him. That when we give our attention all to some other dude, God gets a little angry because he wants to be the only dude in our lives. So because of God's grand love, that he looks at our separation because of sin and he actually does something about it, Jesus comes into the picture and he answers the problem of humanity. He answers the problem of sin. He answers the problem of separation. And the way that he did that was that he came and he lived the life that we should have lived, but also took the wrath of sin that we should have had. And he does all of that to give us a gift that we ultimately don't really deserve, because we've been spending all our time with another dude. Listen, God looks at us and he says, you've created a mess that you can't even clean up. There's sins under sins under sins, this darkness in your heart that you can't clean up yourself. There's no amount of goodness you can do. There's no amount of morale that you can muster up. There's no amount of sincerity that you could actually bring about. You can't clean up this mess. So what I'm going to do as a loving God is I'm going to clean up this mess that you can't clean up for you. Jesus is the only one who addresses the problem correctly and answers the problem correctly. Listen, we all have, weird, small, dark problems in our lives. But the number one problem we all face, the number one problem that we all have, is that we have separation with our Creator. And if there is this separation from our Creator, which causes us to sin, which causes us to make idols and to worship other things, how do we actually fix that? How do we make that right? Now, I don't know if you've ever experienced car troubles, but I have. And I can tell you it's super frustrating when you don't know what the problem is. When you're trying to figure it all out, when you're trying to, put this hose into that hose, or you're trying to put gas in your car. But what if you actually knew what the problem is, but chose to ignore it? Like, what if you took your car to a mechanic and you're like, listen, I know my car's busted up. I don't know exactly what's wrong with it. And the mechanic kind of looks at you and he's like, well, it looks like you just need a new battery. And so you kind of stare at the mechanic, and the mechanic kind of stares at you, and you're still staring at the mechanic, and he's just kind of staring at you. Battery, you just change the battery. Your battery's dead. And you kind of stare at the mechanic, and then you say, okay, that's great. Okay, but I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna change the spark plugs. Or you say like, I'm just gonna add some more fuel to the tank. Oh, you know what it is? I think I need to add some more fluid to the windshield wipers because I use that a lot. I'm like, I gotta clean the windshield. And the mechanic just looks at you and he says like, I don't know why you're trying all that. Those are problems, but your main problem is your battery. You need to fix you get a new one. But you go on and you keep replacing stuff. You put on new brakes, you put on new lights, you put on new tires. And when you get in your car and you try to start it, it's still dead. Why? Because you haven't actually addressed the problem. You need a new battery. It doesn't matter how much you fix the other stuff. You still have this main problem of a dead battery. Your car's dead. And God kind of looks at us the same way. He says, listen, the problem that you have is sin. The problem you have is separation. And you can do all this other stuff to try to fix it, but you still have the problem of a dead heart. You need a new one. No, in fact, Ezekiel 36:26 says, yeah, that was pretty shameless. But Ezekiel 36:26 does say that I will give you a new heart. I will put a new spirit in you. That you have this heart of stone, but I'm going to remove that and give you a heart of flesh. You see, God is doing surgery on us, and that he's actually going to fix the problem. Jesus comes in and gives us a new battery. He gives us life when we are dead. So when Christians say that Jesus is the only way, are they really saying that other religions are wrong? Well, yeah. But what I'm not saying, again, is that in the religion there aren't things that are good or right. But what I am saying is when it comes to salvation, if they believe in being saved by any other mode other than Jesus, well then they have that main thing wrong. And if that main thing is wrong, there are probably some other things that are wrong. And if they still believe that Jesus isn't the only way, well then they still have some separation from God. And plus, Christianity really isn't the only religion that excludes other ideas, because all religions do that. I mean, we're making truth claims, and if you make a truth claim, well then obviously something else has to be false. I mean, if you have one religion that says when you die you're reincarnated, and you look at another religion that says when you die you just become part of the earth, well, they both can't be right. They're mutually exclusive. You're either one or the other, or maybe you're none of them. I mean, it would kind of be like looking at this water bottle and then one person says, oh, this is a mighty nice cat you have. It is a cat, right? And another person says, hey, this is a unique color pink. I've never seen it before. Well, you can look at those two people and say, well, either one is right and one is wrong, or they're both wrong, but they can't both be right at the same time. And just to be clear, that is a water bottle and it is black. It's not a cat and it's not some new shade of pink. And so when we look at all these other religions, what we really have to ask ourselves is not what makes us feel good, but what is right. Remember, we're looking for the truth. We aren't talking about ice cream. We're talking about medicine. We want to know what actually works. I mean, if there is a problem with the world, if there is a problem with humanity, if there is some separation between God and us, how do we resolve that? How do we make it right? Is it by you being a better person, or is it by someone coming and doing something for you? Something that you can't do. And for Christians to say that Jesus is the right medicine, well, again, it's not us making that claim. It's Jesus making this claim about himself. And the way that he proves it is by dying, rising from the dead, showing us that he's defeated death. Jesus proves that he's medicine by doing something that no one else in history has been able to do, to die and raise themselves up from the dead. This is how we can truly know that Jesus is the only way, that he is the truth and the life, and that no other man will come to God except through him. Because he answers the problem, that he goes and addresses the issue and says there's separation between you and God, and here I am to come and save you from that, to be that mediator, to make things whole again. But even with that said, the question that I always get after saying that Jesus is the only way, there is no other way, is, what about those who have never heard about Jesus? Which is a great and awesome question, and probably going to be answered in another time. But I do want to leave you with this. If you really feel strongly about people not knowing Jesus, then this is the great time for you to do something about it. If you believe that Jesus is the only way, the truth, and the life, no other man comes to God except through him, and you have a problem with people never hearing about Jesus, then go tell them about Jesus. Thank you guys, and be blessed. Bye.